Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Wa alaikum assalam. This is Avi, me, and then we have Zana over here as well. He's my partner in crime. And this first episode is on the conflict in Sudan.
Yeah, now this particular episode is quite a serious one and it's quite a befitting one to have as our first episode. And this is one that I personally have been seeing a lot. I mean, at the moment, the world's busy with other conflicts that are going on, namely the conflict occurring in Ukraine as well as the conflict occurring in Palestine as well. Those are the two big conflicts. However, there are many other conflicts happening in the world, and we're here to bring light to those conflicts. When you're ready, Avi. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Yeah, so thank you very much for joining us today. I've been following you as well as quite a few other Sudanese ex-users for quite a while now, because you've been doing a fantastic job at keeping us informed about what's been going on in your country, the horrible things that are occurring there. So we've brought you on today because you are in Sudan right now. You're going through horrific things, and naturally people who are ignorant like ourselves do have a lot of questions, and we don't know any better. So we need, mainstream media ain't talking about this. So we need, our insights from people that are on the ground, like yourself.
Yeah, so do you want to give us a brief explanation of what's happening in Sudan at the moment?
So what is happening in Sudan is that there has been a war that broke out on April 15th or 29th of Ramadan of 2023. So the conflict was initially just limited to areas like Khartoum, Kordofan and Darfur in west of Sudan.
Yeah.
But as of October, it spread onto nearby states, like Al Jazeera, and it's still spreading like wildfire to the rest of Sudan.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of time before it just becomes a civil war.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just to give the viewers a bit of background knowledge here, Khartoum is the capital, yeah?
Yes, Khartoum is the capital city of Sudan.
Fantastic. And furthermore, I know you did mention that it's spreading. Do you want to give us a bit of background of where it is? Where are the hotspots now? Is it in the north, west, south, east? Where is it? And where is safe, if anywhere is safe?
Okay, so the hotspots of the conflict are mainly the capital city, Khartoum, and then there are the west region in general, Darfur region in the west. But right now, Al Jazeera state has become a hotspot. As of now, it's become a hotspot, and they are moving the conflict to neighboring states, which is also becoming a hotspot. So if we were to say that there is a safe place in Sudan, there is no safe place, because today I might be in a safe state, but tomorrow the war might break out in this state.
Yeah.
So there is nowhere safe.
So would you say it might sound bad saying is the primary hotspot or the most dangerous part, the west part of the country?
Yes, the west of the country and Khartoum.
Is Khartoum also, forgive my ignorance, is it also in the west or is it more so in the central, or what's its positioning?
No, Khartoum is in the center of Sudan.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
and
it's
surrounded by other states. Yes.
No problem.
No
And
worries.
in terms of Medani, is that in the west or am I wrong?
Medani is more on the eastern side of Khartoum, not on the west. Yes.
So I think I understand what's happening here. So it looks like the hotspot's the west. It started in the center and it's moving out now from the center to the west and to the east. How about the north and the south? You've not spoken much about the north and the south of the country. Are they more stable or?
So the south of the country has had some few conflicts, but until now it's been relatively stable, and the north as well. The north has been stable ever since this war started, alhamdulillah, but they have plans on going to the north.
Yeah.
So.
Oh wow. Wow,
Yeah.
so they're really trying to hit everything, and I think this is a great time for you to perhaps delve deeper into your journey, because I know we tried arranging this quite a few days ago, but unfortunately because of the situation you had to keep moving. So do you want to explain what part of the country originally were in, where you went, where are you now? What part of the country is that in? How safe are you, if you're safe at all? If you want to go ahead.
Yes. So I was residing in Madani, in Al Jazeera state. Like I said, it was eastern of Khartoum, in the eastern side near Khartoum. So I was staying in my family house, and when the war broke out there, we were just so surprised because Madani is just a small city. It's not even big. Al Jazeera in itself is not, it's just consisting of different small villages, and we have nothing there. So we were all surprised. So when we left Madani, me and my sister and other family members, we had to walk for more than 20 kilometers just to find a vehicle outside of Madani. We just
Subhanallah.
had, yes. And when we finally found a vehicle, unfortunately, it was an RSF vehicle. So
Yeah.
the entire,
Wow.
yes, the entire state has been taken over completely by the RSF. So any vehicle that is roaming around was taken by the RSF. So it was either we ride with them or we just die. We
And
just
was it
die on
like,
the road.
from what we're gonna get into the RSF and who they are and what they're about, but just before we do go there, is that safe to travel with them? I'm surprised. Did you travel with them, by the way? I know you're not finished. Did you travel with them?
Yes. So after we left Madani, we had to walk a few distance to reach a certain village. That village had like a boat side that would get us to the other side of the state, of Al Jazeera state. So we like a few vehicles stopped in the way and they asked us like for to give us a ride to get there. And obviously we couldn't decline because it would be dangerous for us to decline, they would be suspicious of us. Yeah, so we just took the ride there and we just walked the rest of the way.
Honestly, that is
Yeah.
very unreal to hear because, Alhamdulillah, we're living in England at the moment, you know what I mean? So to even imagine that, it's really hard, you know what I mean? Because, we've not been through a similar situation. I don't think anybody out there, apart from the people who have been in your position, will be able to fully understand what's going on.
Yes.
It's honestly unreal, May Allah grant your shifa, inshallah.
I mean.
And
But yeah.
and so you were in Madani. So what part of the country are you in now? I didn't catch the last part. So are you in what part of the country are you in now? You're still in that particular region, or have you moved to the south or the north? Like you said, is a bit safer.
No, I left Al Jazeera state and I went
Yeah.
into Eastern Sudan. I'm in a city in Eastern Sudan right now. It's
Oh, wow.
Eastern Sudan is considered safe. It's the closest to Port Sudan, where the leader of the SAF is
Yeah.
residing. So it's considered safe. We're
Okay.
residing there.
I see.
Alhamdulillah, that's good.
Yeah. Abby, if you want to take
Yeah,
over now.
So I think my main question right now is like, who are the main parties involved? So are there any other countries involved? Which groups are involved? And if you want to give like a brief explanation of, the groups that are involved, who are they? How were they founded? If they are like quite new groups, and just a bit of explanation about that, if you don't mind.
Okay. So the two main parties involved in this conflict are the Sudanese Armed Forces, the SAF, which
Yeah.
is the official military force in Sudan. And then there is
Yeah.
the Rapid Support Forces, the RSF, which is a paramilitary force.
Our military.
So,
Okay.
yeah, there are allies on both sides. They're involved in this conflict. The SAF allies are militant organizations that originated from political parties in Sudan, like the Sudan People's Liberation Movement, the Sudan Liberation Movement, which joined the SAF in August. There's also the Justice and Equality Movement, which joined the SAF in November this year. And the countries that are in alleged allyship with the SAF, the Sudanese armed forces, are countries like Egypt, like Russia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Turkey. All these countries are in alleged allyship with the Sudanese armed forces. So,
Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
yeah.
So am I correct in assuming, so just to put it very simply for people, it sounds like the SAF is the were they democratically elected? Are they like part of the? Are they the country's military basically? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
fantastic.
yeah.
And what about the RSF? How do they differ? So they clearly are not the country's military. So you mentioned they're a paramilitary force. How did they gain power? Who's behind them allegedly?
Okay, so to give a brief history of the RSF, um, okay, so the RSF originated from Al Janjaweed. Al Janjaweed
Yeah.
is a word,
Yeah.
that is derived from the word jinn, which means demons or insane. So Al Janjaweed in our language in Sudanese means the demon horseman. So they come from Sudanese Arab tribes, the Abala tribes, which originally were employed in camel herding. They're from Darfur regions in the west of Sudan. So the Janjaweed, they were created by the overthrown president al-Bashir to fight on the behalf of the Sudanese government during the war to fight the anti-government insurgency by African groups in Darfur. So there was a war in Darfur in 2003 that was led by anti-government groups or rebel groups that were formed by African ethnic groups in Darfur. Um, so al-Bashir, instead of like using the official military to fight these groups, he made the Janjaweed so they can fight on his behalf in Darfur. So
Well, what
yeah,
happened to
then
Bashir then? If you want to
yeah,
carry
the
on
Bashir
chronologically.
the Bashir was overthrown
Okay.
in 2019. He was overthrown by the Sudanese Revolution in
Okay.
2019. And from then, the Janjaweed are not called Janjaweed anymore. They are called the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces, and they became an official and a kind of official military group after al-Bashir was overthrown, and they gained like international support from certain countries.
Okay. So correct. So just from my understanding from what you're saying, it sounds like Bashir had, am I correct in assuming he had the SAF as an official military, but he chose to instead create this Janjaweed, use
Yes,
them to fight in Darfur. Then he got deposed
yes.
or taken down in 2019, and now they're still roaming around. So logical question then is, why are they now fighting the SAF? What's their motive? What's their goal? If you want to go into that next.
Yes. Okay. So after al-Bashir was overthrown, there has been a new government that was created with the help of like the official leader of the SAF, Al-Fattah al-Burhan, along with Hemeti, the leader of the RSF. So they both had hands with each other in this government, but then Hemeti got more international support and he got to grow his forces. His forces were just 12,000 soldiers. But
Wow.
by the year 2021-22, his forces grew to 125,000
Oh
soldiers.
wow, that
Where
is
did you get
Yes.
them from?
He got them by recruiting people from Darfur regions, from recruiting people from outside of Sudan, from neighboring countries like Chad, Niger, Central Africa, Libya, all
And
these countries.
just to follow up, because initially, I mean, I know we're going back a bit. You mentioned Darfur. You mentioned how Al Bashir actually he created this Janjaweed. Where did he initially get these people from? They sound like Bedouin kind of people, or they sound like mercenaries. Are they one of those two, or Janjaweed?
Okay, so Al Janjaweed people, he gathered them from the Abala Arabs. So he utilized um, racial speech to grow the Janjaweed. Because in Darfur, there's always been like this ethnic or racial conflict between like the Arab tribes and the African tribes.
Wow.
So al-Bashir used that to make the Janjaweed. A Janjaweed are made from the Arab tribes in Darfur, the Abala tribes, who were officially just, they were just camel
Bedouin.
herding, they were
Are
cattle
they
herding, they were just Bedouins.
Bedouins? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And so initially the Janjaweed didn't. Am I correct in saying initially they weren't like foreign fighters?
No, they weren't.
So at what point was it after al-Bashir's downfall that foreign fighters came in?
Yes.
And
Yes,
how are they
after
getting in?
Bashir's downfall.
How are they coming into the country? Who's bringing them in?
Unfortunately, there are countries that are hand in hand in this, like Chad. They're coming through Chad and Central Africa through the borders of Darfur. They're
Isn't
also
the
being
SAF trying to stop them? I do apologize. Isn't the SAF trying to stop them, or are they not able to do it, or what's going on there?
the SAF cannot. They're not able to do it because most of the Darfur region is now controlled by the RSF. Also,
Oh, wow.
yes, the Chad borders. The president of Chad is also in very close relations with Hemeti, the leader of the RSF. So the borders are always open for new recruiters. Also, the borders with Libya. They're also coming through Libya.
Ah,
I see. It's
Libya
quite
as well.
interesting. This so, if in fact, it's quite interesting how initially there were Bedouins, and then al-Bashir was taken down, and then now they're fighting against the one. So were they? Once the new leader was elected and he was brought in, were the RSF part of the government with the? What happened to the RSF following al-Bashir's downfall?
So the RSF they
Janjaweed,
gained,
sorry.
yeah, the
Janjaweed, sorry.
Janjaweed.
Yeah.
So after al-Bashir was overthrown, the Janjaweed they grew up the RSF, and they gained legality in the government that was made, and from then the RSF just started growing. They started gaining international support. They started gaining new recruiters, new weaponry, and it was all under the supervision of Al-Fattah al-Burhan, who was the leader of the SAF. He allowed this to happen, allowed the RSF to grow. I mean, I've seen the RSF like roaming in the middle of like Khartoum when I was still there before the war. They were in every corner. I've never seen a militia get this much access to a city. It was just so, odd to see.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And in terms of the situation at the moment, just so people can understand, I mean, the country, is a certain part of the country primarily controlled by the RSF? And if so, which regions? If we're just talking about generally, because I know it's a big country, northwest, east, south, which parts are RSF dominated and which are SAF dominated?
Okay, so as of now, most of the western region of Sudan is dominated by the RSF.
Okay.
Yes, and most of Khartoum is also dominated by the RSF.
And
Except certain places. And now Al Jazeera state is dominated fully by the RSF.
and where is the SAF? Where are they? What's their power base?
So the SAF are currently in the northern part of Sudan, the northern states, and the eastern states.
And have they got any plan to deal with the RSF? I mean, I know they're fighting, but have they got any plan to retake, or are they in the process of trying to retake land from them?
Unfortunately, the SAF itself is a corrupt organization in itself. It's very corrupt. There's a lot of internal conflict in the SAF themselves, which is one of the main reasons why Madani fell in the hands of the RSF. So yeah, so when the RSF like takes hold of a city or a state, they just give it to them without fighting back.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's insane. And just to follow up here, I mean, this is a Muslim country, so in terms of the RSF, so what is their primary ethnicity? What are they mostly made up of, the RSF?
So the RSF are mostly Muslims, from what I gather from their speeches. They're always hailing Allahu Akbar, but their actions are nothing related to Islam. So
What about ethnically
Yeah.
speaking? Are they more Arab Muslims or are they more African Muslims? Ethnically speaking.
So the origins of the RSF, the ethnic background of the RSF can be traced back to the Arab tribes of Darfur, but as of now, many tribes and ethnic groups are in this militia, both from the west of Sudan, the north, African tribes, Arab
As
tribes,
well
all
as
together.
Yeah.
as well
Yeah.
as other African. About the other ones that are coming from Libya and these other countries, are they also of the Muslim faith or claiming to
Yes,
be?
yes, most of them are claiming to be from the Muslim faith. Yes,
Yeah, so it's quite literally Muslims against Muslims at this point, isn't it? It's
yes.
disgusting, honestly.
But
But I
would
guess
you say it is a religious conflict?
I wouldn't say it is a religious conflict. It's more of an ethnic conflict.
Okay. And this is quite
Yes.
interesting here that
yeah.
you mentioned that because you guys, sorry, I've spoken quite a bit. Go ahead,
No,
sorry.
no, sorry. Yeah, because at least from what I've seen online on Twitter, it looks more like what is portrayed to be more of a religious thing than a ethnic thing. But I guess with the things that we've had against Islam in general, it makes sense why people would promote it as a Islamic religious thing than an ethnic thing because that's just
Mm.
the way the world works, I guess.
In
But
terms of ethnic, I mean, so we know for a fact you've said that this is an ethnic conflict. So, what's the reason that I'm assuming it's Arab versus African? So, what's the reason for that? Considering Islam is so anti-racism, what's the reason for that? Is it just that they're ignorant? Is it that there's history? What is it?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
What's the reason for the ethnic conflict between the Arabs and the Africans
Oh,
in Sudan? Is it because of history? I mean, the faith is so anti-racism. So why are they
mm.
why are they fighting each other when they're the same faith? Why the racism?
Okay, so in my humble opinion, I think it traces back to the previous regime, al-Bashir regime, which has been, controlling Sudan for 30 years. So ever since the 80s, there has been a rampant racial speech against certain ethnic groups, in Darfur, specifically African tribes. So there has always been this type of speech to just make Sudan an all Arab country. All Arabs just take over the country and get rid of the African tribes. So it's always been uh, a type of, ethnic conflict that was just,
And did it
yeah.
begin and does it go back to the Bashir regime? Is that the starting
Uh,
point?
I wouldn't say al-Bashir regime specifically was the starting point. Presidents before al-Bashir were also encouraging this type of speech, but I would say al-Bashir was one of the main reasons why this speech has been embedded in most of like the parties of this conflict right now.
Okay, and
right.
so that leads us to a very interesting question. I mean, you've encountered these RSF soldiers now, and the question
Yes.
is quite a simple one. I mean, why are they killing Muslims? I mean, how do they logically or rationally, reconcile this with their faith? I mean, do you have any ideas how they're able to do it, or how are they able to kill other Muslims while claiming to be Muslim themselves? Is it that they think they aren't Muslims, or is it that they're so ignorant, or what is it?
Okay. So from what I have encountered and heard from real RSF militiamen while they were talking to each other, they think that all these crimes that they're committing, the killing of people and the looting and the raping of women, they think it's all justifiable because it is I don't know how to translate the word in English, but the word غنائم حرب, like treasures of war.
The
Like,
spoils of
Yeah,
war.
yeah, yeah.
yes,
Yeah,
yes. This is what they call these crimes. They call it, these like
unfair,
treasures that they
basically. Yeah.
get. Yes, exactly.
Mm, okay. It's quite interesting. So, if the treasures, I mean, do they still consider though the Muslims they're killing to be Muslims,
No,
or have they or they don't? So they've actually excommunicated them in their minds.
no, in their minds, they think that this is not, even if you're Muslim, at the end of the day, you're someone who is from the north, from an ethnic group that aided in the killing of my people. You stole my opportunities, you stole my houses. So I don't have any sympathy for you. So I can kill you all I want. I can take your things all I want. It doesn't matter if you're Muslim.
So
Wow.
you would definitely say that the leaders of the RSF and the on average the quote unquote laymen of the RSF are not very practicing. They're more so just cultural Muslims, so to speak.
Yes, exactly. They're just cultural Muslims.
So there's no like scholar or anything in Sudan who's backing them, and just to give them any religious justification for it. It's more so just we're cultural
No,
Muslims, so we're gonna kill you
no,
because of ethnic reasons. Yeah.
no. Every scholar man of Sudan has been against the RSF ever since this conflict started.
Fantastic. That's really great to hear. And Avi, yeah, if you want to pick up from 6.
Yeah, so I guess how long has it been in war then? Because you've left it off, a banger sentence to be honest. But yeah, so how long has it been in a state of war? Like, would you say it's a very unstable country at the moment, or is it just on or off? Like you said, there's some hot spots and then there isn't. It moves somewhere else, or what would you say?
Okay, so honestly, Sudan has not been a stable country for decades for now. So
Yeah,
there has been a civil war that started in 1983 and it ended in 2005. So this
yeah,
civil war
Wow.
was, yeah, it was against al-Bashir regime and South Sudan, which is now an independent country. So this civil
Yeah.
war, it was started by al-Bashir because he wanted a full Islamic country, and most of the tribes in South Sudan were Christian. So they did not like that. So they started a war against South Sudanese people, which resulted in the killing of thousands of civilians, both from
Wow.
the north and the south. And yeah, it ended with the south just gaining its independence from the north.
And
So
just follow up, there is the South Oak in terms of the current conflict. The South isn't really involved. They're doing their own thing. Yeah.
yeah, they're not really involved in the conflict.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead. What were you saying?
So I was saying there has been another civil war in Darfur in 2003.
Yeah.
So this was also done by al-Bashir regime, also against African tribes in Darfur. They have committed heinous crimes. They have committed one of the biggest genocides in the history of Sudan, uh, which this second civil war, which also sparked the creation of Janjaweed or the RSF now.
Wow.
wow, that's
So effectively, from what I'm getting here, at first it was originally in the 80s, it was a till 2005, it was a religious conflict between Muslims and Christians. Well, Bashir's
Yes,
regime and Christians, they split, and then all of a sudden he has to have another conflict with the ethnic tribes in Darfur. Why though? I mean, if he wants to make an Islamic country, okay, South Sudan's gone away now. Why even bother starting issues with Darfur when he can now that Sudan's Sudan and South Sudan is gone, he kind of has a Muslim majority. So why didn't he go through and make his Muslim Islamic country? What stopped him?
so yeah, uh, in order to make this Islamic country, the entire population of Sudan has to be of the Arab ethnicity. They don't want any African tribe,
Wow.
unfortunately. Yeah,
Which is like which is antithetical to the Islamic faith. Makes no sense.
yes,
yeah,
Wow.
exactly.
Wow, that's really surprising. And I mean, so you mentioned some of the leaders. I just want to go back to one quick thing. So you mentioned the leader of the SAF. You mentioned the previous leader of the Janjaweed. Then you mentioned the current leader. Have you mentioned the current leader of the SAF? It was what's it, Al Burhan or something you mentioned?
Yes, Al Burhan. Yes.
al-Burhan, and then in terms of Janjaweed, originally was Omar al-Bashir. And who's the current leader? Just so we can get his name.
So the leader of Al-Janjaweed is the same leader of the RSF. He was facilitated and brought by al-Bashir. His name is Hamidti, or Muhammad Hamdan Dagalo.
Okay, so that's his name. And
Yes.
you mentioned various countries that are supporting the SAF, which I never knew about. Saudi and Egypt and
You wouldn't
and
expect it,
Russia.
would you? Honestly,
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Yes.
100%.
shocking to hear.
So that naturally makes us wonder who's backing the RSF, which countries? Be as explicit as you want.
Okay. So the RSF is mainly backed up by the UAE. It's also backed up by other countries like Chad, like Israel, Kenya, Russia, but Russia, it's supported by the Wagner Group. So it's a non-state support. There's also Uganda, there's Libya.
Wow. So how is Russia playing that double game then? Do apologize, Avi. How is Russia playing that double game? So it's back in the SAF, and then it's also got the paramilitary group of Wagner doing the same thing.
Yes,
Don't the
it's
SAF
very,
have a problem with that, or are they like not in a position to argue? Or sorry, go ahead.
yeah, they're not honestly in a position to argue right now. So,
All right.
yeah.
That's quite interesting.
Yeah, that's
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
I just can't get my head around it all. It's like, especially from what you read online, like when you're hearing it now, it's there's so much going on. And I guess like my main question is like, why are the UAE involved? Why is Russia involved? Like, what are they getting out of it? You know?
So the UAE's main goal of this colonial project in Sudan is to take over the gold mines in Darfur. Darfur has been very rich. They have mountains of gold and uranium that is
Yeah.
in Darfur. So the UAE putting their hands with Hemeti gives them the ultimate you know the ultimate way to get a hold of this gold easily. Same thing goes with Russia, honestly. Like they all just want, the resources this country has. They get to they just want to cherry pick these resources without having any problems, without having any obstacles on the way. And the main obstacle right now was the SAF. And yeah.
Yeah, because
That's
to
quite.
be fair, like with the gold as well, that's not something I've heard. Whenever you hear about, countries having, quite a lot of gold, you usually hear like, China, Australia, Russia, where they have, gold in the ground, in the mines. But,
Yeah.
that's something I've never heard, like even with a lot of the things you've said, it seems like, you know, uh, the media in general does hold back a lot against, giving credit to,
Yes.
the countries like Sudan out there. It's saddening,
Mm.
to be honest.
Yeah.
Definitely. And one quick question I do have, just to follow up from Avi's, is you mentioned the UAE and how they want gold. I mean, I don't get it. Why do they want gold when they have so much of that juicy oil? Why do they want gold? They have enough money. Is there a reason? Is there more to it?
Honestly, I haven't made sense of why exactly they just want this gold, but I think it's part of their project of, you know, enhancing their country in some type of way.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense to me, honestly.
One thing I would add to that is I have read online that apparently the oil is running out in the Gulf.
Yeah, that is something
Perhaps
I've
it's
heard.
linked to that.
Yeah, perhaps, yes. Yes.
Perhaps it's linked to that. And just to quickly add on to this as well, you mentioned Russia. How can we not mention America and China? So I know China's heavily influenced in Africa right now, in Asia,
Yes.
in the Middle East. Unlike America, where it gets involved, militarily, China seems to just build you roads and build you hospitals. What is
Yes.
China's involvement, if any, in Sudan?
So, from what I know, China is heavily involved in Sudan, and it has always been involved, especially with the previous regime. But right now, I couldn't find articles that have a direct link to China and the US in particular. So that's why
How about
I
Europe?
couldn't like. So
How about
Europe,
Europe?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, there has been countries that had oil mines also in Darfur, like Sweden, for example, and Norway. They had oil mines in Darfur, and they killed people. They took part in the genocides in Darfur to keep those oil mines.
Wow.
Yeah,
Is that via the groups involved, or did they bring their own mercenaries in?
Yeah, it was mainly by the groups involved. Yes.
And apart from Wagner, are there any other foreign mercenary groups involved? Any big groups that we should know about?
Right now, there hasn't been any other groups stated other than the Wagner group.
Okay.
all right.
that's
So
cool.
I'm guessing, like, ISIS, Al Qaeda, they don't operate, in Sudan. I'm guessing.
So ISIS and Al Qaeda has been a prominent part in Sudan
Yeah.
in like the time of the previous regime, because the previous regime is like an extension to the Islamic Brotherhood in Sudan. So
Yeah.
they have had like real connections and ties with Al Qaeda and ISIS, but ever since al Bashir has been overthrown with his regime, there hasn't been any movements from ISIS or Al Qaeda in Sudan.
So it definitely isn't common for them to do any acts of terrorism. How about this year? Have you heard about
No.
any terrorist attack this year at all?
In Sudan?
In Sudan, yeah, specifically from Daesh or Al Qaeda.
No. I haven't heard any terrorist attacks.
Fantastic, yeah.
That's
So,
good news,
I mean, I'm assuming the groups still exist, but they're underground. They're not just active.
Yeah, they're not active in Sudan. They're not prominent here.
But they're
Yeah.
but they're underground somewhere. Okay. And one quick
Yes.
question I did want to go back to, because you mentioned South Sudan. You mentioned how it was primarily a religious thing. What
Yeah.
is the role of the minorities that are not Muslim in the current conflict? That's a bonus question for you.
Okay, so like I said, there has been like a minority of Christians, like 5.4%. They're still in Sudan. They have been also subjected to a lot of terrorism by the RSF, especially for their religious background. Most of the Christian Sudanese population has been residing in Khartoum, the capital city, and then they moved to Madani after the war. And now, after Madani being taken over by the RSF, there has been a lot of acts of violence against them.
Would you say the RSF is persecuting Christians and Muslims equally, or are they more severe towards the Christians?
Honestly, the severity of their crimes cannot be measured because they're just alike. They just treat every Sudanese civilian with the same level of violence, if not more.
I see.
I would say, yeah.
And since we're talking about violence, it's a perfect time to ask a very important question, which is what crimes are being committed. So the people want to know, what crimes, what war crimes, be as explicit as you wish. Go ahead.
A lot of people died in their houses and got buried in the yard or just left out to decompose. Should I just kill myself? Would Allah forgive me if I just kill myself before they get to me?